Hi, I'm Mark. Welcome back to Foothill Paint Fabrication. Well, today we're going to finish up some stuff I've been doing off camera. We've got the dash cluster all ready to go. I've got the Dakota Digital Gauges all installed. I've got a stereo installed. We've obviously got the AC vent installed that we did on a previous video. And we're going to get all this hooked up, get all the AC lines hooked up. Also, we're going to get the condenser installed. Basically, I'm going to try to get the air conditioning done, except for the compressor. Since the engine's not in, we can't do any of that plumbing. But I'm going to try to get as much done as possible, so when the engine goes in, all we have to do is fabricate a couple of lines, and it'll be ready to go. So let's jump in here and take a look at what I've already got done. Okay, let's start with the Dakota Digital Gauges. I got them installed. They're looking really good. And if you guys aren't familiar with the gauge sets that they provide, this one is all one unit. So all you do is basically just take your old one off and screw this right to your dash panel. It's got a Cat 5 cable that connects it to the main brain. I'll show you that in a minute. And then these two connections right here are for your blinkers, to light your blinkers up in the original spot location, which is right here. And also it all has one inside one of the dials, I think, on each side. So you can do it either way, or in this case I've done both, and we're going to see how it looks. May disconnect it, I don't know, we'll see how it goes. So I got the headlight switch in, the 2-speed windshield wiper, and then the ignition switch, cigarette lighter, and we installed a stereo that John's wife got him for Father's Day from Custom Auto Sound. And it's got Bluetooth, for your phone, the whole deal. So it's a nice unit. It looks really good in there. It looks, period correct. And they're supposed to just slide right in, but this one did not slide right in. When they make these, this dimension from here to here should be 1.5 inches. And they're actually making them about a 30-second, a little strong 30-second over 1.5 inches. And then this repop dash was a 30-second under 1.5 inches. So I had to take a block and actually sand, the dash panel to get it to fit in there. But, it took about 1.5 hours to carefully sand that so I didn't screw anything up. But all in all, it looks really nice. It's all done, and it's ready to go in. Now let's jump inside and see what I got accomplished in there. Okay, here's where I installed the control box for the Dakota Digital Gauges. And you can see where I've connected it to the 2 down rods that come off the windshield wiper cowl, go down, they support the steering column. So those are, 5/16 rods or whatever. So I used a couple of just those insulated clamps on one on each side, and put it right to the mount on the box. So it worked out perfect, and it's back out of the way. And it's actually going to help isolate it from vibration. So, and it made it easy to wire. Everything was right there, right where I needed it to be. So I didn't have to extend too many wires off the main harness to go ahead and get it to work. So it all, worked out really well right there. The next thing I got installed was the, you'll see a little speaker right there. I put a speaker on each side. I hid it up inside here. So you can see I've got the vent installed, and it looks really good. So they're all installed, and right here I used, for a knob, I used just a little door unlock knob, cut it down a little bit, and just put a screw through the back there. So it's just a fake knob, but it looks really good. I think it looks period correct, and it looks really good. Let me get over here. So you can see that, that hole we cut worked out really well, and that looks really nice right there. So I got the hoses connected in the back through the GTO coupler that has the little felt on it. And what I did was those hoses, you can see way back in there, those hoses actually slide inside of it. So what I did was I put some sealer up inside there, I slid the hose in there, and then I put some sealer on the back of it and let it set. And then once it was thoroughly dry over a couple of days, it was paintable. I just spritzed a little bit of flat black paint inside where the sealer, because the sealer's tan, so you couldn't see it. It's all black down inside there. So, and the rest of it, let me reposition real quick, and I'll show you this hose mess we got going on over here. Okay, you can see the other vent over there. It's installed. I got the hose run over. Got all the wiring tucked away for the AC box. And so all these hoses right here actually go somewhere. So I've got the two side vents connected already, and I have the two hoses ready to connect to the center AC vent, and this one right here just needs to be connected to the defroster. So I've got all the stereo connections ready to go hanging down here. I've got the Dakota Digital Cat 5 cable and the left and right blinkers. I've got the headlight switch, the ignition switch. I got everything ready to go. So let's go ahead and get the dash in here and see if we can get this thing installed. Okay, I almost forgot one thing. Now you noticed on the factory dash, they had some steel little plates that connect all the switches and everything, and that's for a ground. Now that normally gets grounded right here to the chassis, but that's pretty sketchy ground right there. And it would touch in a couple of spots, but that actually makes sure that the windshield wiper works properly, because as you guys know, it works off a floating ground, and it also provides the ground for the cigarette lighter, which draws a fair amount of amp. So what I did was, since they want this used to connect right here where the dash connected, and it was of course all steel bodied, so what I did was I just put a connector on there, and I just ran a wire over and I put it onto the other one where it connected to the other side of the dash, and then I ran a jumper over here and just put a spade connector on here, and there's a corresponding one that's hooked to the chassis up underneath the dash. So I'm going to plug that in so all these get grounded very well, and I used a little bit heavier wire. I had this laying around, a little bit lighter wire because these don't need that much juice. But the cigarette lighter, not that John's going to use it, but just in case somebody tries to use it, we've got plenty of capacity on this wire here. So like I said, I'm just going to plug this in, plug everything else in, and try to get that dash up in there by myself. Okay, I got the dash sitting up on a box here. It's my helper today, since you guys know you're working by yourself. You got to do what you got to do. So I just wanted it as close as possible so I can make as many connections as I can without trying to hold it up and make the connections. So I'm just going to time lapse through this. Hopefully we knock it out real quick. I went ahead and made sure all the screw clips were in place and lined up. One was actually missing down here, so I dug through my stuff and I found one. So when I put the screws up through, everything's ready to go. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just going to time lapse through this real quick, and hopefully we'll get this thing installed first try. Okay, that's all the electrical connections I can reach. The ignition switch and some of this other stuff, I'm just going to have to reach up inside. The pigtails are very short on those. So I'm hoping to get the headlight switch connected. I'm going to have to reach up to get the the windshield wiper switch connected. So now we got to get the AC vents connected. And the hoses are a little bit shorter than I like. I should have cut them a little bit longer, but I was running a little short on hose, so I kind of just did the best I could. They will reach, it's just a little bit of a tight fit. So let's get those in. Come on, baby. Fit in there. we got it. Start getting a couple of screws in here. Part way at least to hold it. All right, I'm going to get the rest of the screws in. We got, I think, 4 up here, 3 on the bottom. We got the two I just put in the side. And then I'm going to reach up in there and try to get all the switches connected. Hopefully, I don't have to back the dash away to try to connect the switches because the harness is pretty short. You guys remember I had to kind of restore that harness, so it got a little bit shorter, maybe an inch, ½ inch. So some of these plugs are a little bit closer than they were before. I had to disconnect a couple of hoses so I could get everything in there, and then I'm going to route it around. The stereo sticking back quite a ways, and it was bumping one of the hoses. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy to get this thing in. So let me get all these screws in, get the switches all connected, the harnesses, get all this tucked up underneath here, and then I'll bring you back. We'll take a look at it. Okay, all done. Got it all installed. Everything's connected. I had to actually disconnect 2 hoses for the AC system to get the dash in, and then reconnect them, reroute them, because the stereo pushed back farther than I thought it would, and so it kind of backed up into them. So I had to kind of finagle something up underneath there once it was all installed. I got all the switches and everything are connected. The headlight switch and the windshield wiper were the 2 hardest, way up inside there. But everything else is connected, and got all the screws in, so this thing is in permanently. They had about half the screws in this dash were wrong. They just used like zinc plated ones in a few spots. So I dumped the big old coffee can out that I've got, accumulated screws and clips and stuff, and found the right screws. Let's look underneath and see how it turned out. Okay, you can see I got all the hoses up and routed. All the wires are just kind of tucked underneath there for right now. I do not want to kind of get everything where it belongs and zip tight in place until I start testing, make sure everything works. And once I'm sure everything's working properly, then I'll go ahead and kind of tidy up everything and get it all zip tied and put in one place so it's out of the way. Other than that, it all looks good. You can see right here, here's the vintage air system. That's where you do your refit, take your cables off, and put these rheostats on and connect them. Once I power up, I still have to teach the ECM what the limits are on these, so that's part of the vintage air system. So we got the hoses, got all the wires up over here, kind of hard to see, but all in all, I'm happy. Everything's connected, and all we have to do is test it once we power up. So I'm glad to get that done. I'm glad everything fit. It was a tight squeeze. Okay, now that we have all the AC ducts hooked up and the dash back in, really all that's left to do is get the pedals back in and the steering column. So that's about done. So now it's time to move over to getting the condenser on and the hard lines and the dryer. So everything will be ready for when the engine goes in. And if you guys can see, I've already run the lines. There's the heater hoses and the AC lines. And I've also done quite a bit of electrical work. So you can see right here, I've made a little panel, and those are circuit breakers. So this one right here is 40 amp, and it runs over to the relay for the electric fans on the radiator. Then the next one is a 30 amp, and it goes to the amp for the stereo. And the last one on the right here is a 30 amp circuit breaker for the AC system. So we're basically ready to go. I've got some extra wire laying there for when the fans are wired up and everything's ready to go. But other than that, the electrical's pretty much done. So all we have to do is get the condenser on and the hard lines and the dryer. So I've already got started over here. We've got the brackets on. They tell you these systems are pretty good. This goes back and forth depending on what car you're doing. And they put the little tabs to attach it right to the factory locations. I think we need to drill and put one bolt in. Other than that, it uses the other spot. So let's get this thing in. Okay, let's get the condenser in. I've got a couple of bolts in the bottom there, so I can just lower this down onto it. Get to fit through here. It's just got to rest there a little bit because we have to get the pieces in the right order. So this cross member piece right here, the radiator support needs to go in. but that bolt I just put in is in the way. So, but I want to get the hood latch in it as well, and that needs to sit on top. So I kind of have to, you know, mess around by sticking a bolt in, get it started, get the condenser to stay since I'm working by myself. So we get that in, then I can pull this other bolt out of the way, and then get the grill support or the radiator support arm right here in the center installed. And once that's installed, then we can get the latch mechanism reinstalled. So I'm just going to kind of try to drop this in here. Get that lifted up, get that swung over, and we're just about lined up. And everything fits. So it clears right here. It's good to go. I'm going to get the bolt back in on the bottom, and then we can get that hood latch back in. All right, well that's started. We'll get this lined up. We'll drop this back in. And I don't know if you guys remember, but they had had a piece of steel welded on here to padlock this together. I ground all that off. There's no need for it. They were very diligent about getting this car, making sure this car didn't get stolen. But a lot of the work that was done was, you know, it was so hard to use, I don't think you would ever do it. So you wouldn't, you know, padlock that so they couldn't open the hood or anything else. And really, if you're going to go to that much trouble, you could cut that off and put a remote hood release on. It'd be a lot easier, and you're going to use it more often instead of putting a padlock on there. So let me get these bolts in and get them tightened up, and then we can move forward with getting the hard lines installed. Okay, those are all tight, so let's get to work on the hard lines and the dryer. Okay, so the first thing really you need to do is, after you get the condenser in, is get the dryer installed, because this number 6 hard line has to go up and connect to it. So you may have to bend it a little bit to get everything to fit just right. There's a dimple on this inner fender well where you drill the hole out where the factory dryer goes. So, but you got a little bit of wiggle room there. You got to clear the battery. I've already got the number 6 line. I already crimped the end on, the 90, and it's attached to the dryer, so that's done. You basically have to pull it out here, make the connection, and then stuff it back up underneath there. But I've got it loose still, so I can get the line on. So let's get the small line on. This one is more kind of a difficult because it's so rigid. Let's go ahead and get the caps off. I've already put the O-rings on and lubed them, so they're ready to go. This up underneath here. And I'm just going to do hand tight on everything until everything's set and ready to go, and then we can you know, put some wrenches on it and get everything tight just the way it's supposed to be. So this tube comes up, and I've routed my hoses. I got a heater hose here. It's going to go to the water pump. I've got the suction line, the number 8, underneath the battery box with this heater hose, and then of course the number 6 is inside the fender well here, and then the other heater hose is right here out of the way. So we need to connect these two together, and if I look at it, it's pretty close. I don't want to force it on there. I'd rather have it just lay just where it's supposed to go. So basically I'm just going to tweak it. These are aluminum, so I mean it only, you know, a 3-year-old could bend these if they wanted to. So that's looking pretty good right there. It's pretty much a straight shot in, so I'm going to go ahead and make the connection. We got to put an O-ring on this one. I haven't done that yet. And I don't want to leave the dryer open because it's full of desiccant. And if you leave the dryer open, it's going to absorb moisture out of the air, and then kind of, you know, it's already partially used up by the time you charge up the system. So I'm just putting some mineral oil on the seals here to lube them up. And I'll put a little bit on the back side here where the nut rubs, and then we'll get some on the threads here so everything threads together really nice and smooth. So, and I'll put a little bit, I got some on my finger here. We'll put a little bit on the threads here. Let's get it installed. Bring that over. Looks like it's going to reach. Get it dropped inside. There we go. And by leaving everything loose like this, it gives you the option to, make it easy to align everything, and then you can kind of see where it wants to be. And that's looking really good right there. So I can actually get this tightened up, and then we'll figure out where the other one's going to land. So let me get a wrench on that, get that tightened up. Okay, so we've got it connected, the number 6 connected to the dryer, so we're all the way to the condenser. Now let's put the number 8 on. So this will go up underneath here. It's supposed to be on the inboard side of the number 6. But I don't know if it's going to want to go there. These tubes don't seem like they want to lay just right. We may have to put a little bend on them here, I'm not sure. Okay, you just saw me pull it out and just put a little bend on it, and that took care of it. Now it looks like it's laying just in the right spot. So these will get a couple of Dell clamps to clamp those together, and then this one will be clamped to the frame. I'm not exactly sure. There's a hole right here, so we may just use that clamp, a spot right there, but we need to fix this so it doesn't rattle around and possibly wear a hole in the aluminum. So I'm going to go ahead and get these fittings tightened up real quick, and then we can get this clamped up, and I think we're getting really close. Okay, I got the Dell clamps on here. They can send you a small one and a big one, and then a small one for over here and a little bracket to get it attached to the chassis. So let's get these two put together here. They just kind of clamp the two together. And then this one over here will actually do the attaching it to the frame. These tightened up, and we will be about done. Okay, we've got that tightened here. I've got to tighten them on the condenser here, and that'll be done. We're attached to the frame, really secure, so this thing's not going to be bouncing around. I'm going to tighten up the bolt that clamps the dryer to the inner fender well, and we will be done. Okay, the condenser's all in. Everything's tight. Everything's looking really good. No real surprises on these kits. Vintage Air does a really good job on it. Sometimes you have to tweak a few things here and there, but all in all, works out well. Got everything back where it belongs. The trinary switch is in on the dryer, just waiting to be wired up, but we'll have to wait on that till we get the engine in and finish up some of that wiring. Also, inside the car is all done as far as the dash goes. So we accomplished what we wanted to get done. We got the vents in, both left and right. The balls move a little stiff, but they'll loosen up over time. Got the center vent plumbed, all the ducts on there, and the gauge is connected and everything's looking good inside here. We won't put the glove box cover on until the ECM for the air control box is programmed, and till the AC is charged up and we know everything's working good. There's no reason to put all that in until we know everything's working just fine. So all in all, I'm really happy to start putting this thing back together. Okay, that just about wraps up the project for the day. We're getting really close to putting the engine in. I think next step is actually putting the serpentine belt system on the engine before we lower it down into the engine bay here. So we got the condenser on, we got the dash in, all the hoses hooked up, everything looks like it's working good. We won't know till we power it up, but fingers crossed I got everything right. But I'm happy to get this thing moving along. Thanks for joining me here at Foothill Paint Fabrication. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you haven't already, and mash that bell icon so you get notifications every time I release a new video. We'll see you on the next one.